Springboard. And we're still waiting on Alessandro to join us. I think he's having some technical difficulties, but he'll be with us momentarily. So without further ado, let's get started. I think I do have an announcement, and that is that there's going to be 3 lucky winners who are getting a giveaway from Sketch. So that's a subscription for 12 months, and you're getting 3 swag boxes as well. So yeah, just hang on. We're going to pick these lucky winners by the end of this session, and let's get started with the questions. So I think we've got a few great questions that I'd love to hear because I know that these guys are mentors around the world. So I'd love to hear some of their insights as well. And so we'll just start off with tell us your everyday go-to UX mantra and how do you manage to reflect that onto your work? So do you want to take that on, Christian?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one for sure. Thanks for the...
Yeah, maybe before we start, you could tell us where in the world you're doing this from.
Yeah, I can introduce myself a little bit. So first of all, thanks a lot for joining today. I would not expect that amount of people, to be honest, but I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I'm from Barcelona. I'm a product designer and I'm working at Sketch currently. And actually this month, this August, I will hit a year at the company. At Sketch, probably you were wondering what I'm doing. So I'm working at the workspaces team. This means that we are responsible of how you structure all your documents within Sketch, within the workspace, how you move around your documents within the workspace, and all things related to documents and permissions as well. As I said, I'm from Barcelona, but I'm living in a small town near Barcelona, which is called Alella. And yeah, it's been a great experience so far this year working at Sketch, and yeah, happy to be here. And thanks a lot for joining us today. And now, if I come back to your initial question about UX mantras, well, I think that what I like to do whenever I start a new project is to understand what I have to do. So I need to understand the project itself, why we are doing this, for who we are doing it, and all these questions that pop into my mind before I start looking into the UI. So I think that what I like to do is basically zoom out from the UI as much as I can at the beginning, and then do research, ask around, perhaps first of all to my colleagues, and then start doing research and so on. That would be one thing probably. Another thing that I feel like it's important to keep in mind when you are working is that you should not fall in love with what you do. In the sense of, because I saw many people getting frustrated because of this, of working on projects that some parts of these projects were just parked because reasons. You are working and maybe in the end there's not enough time on implementing something the way you envision it would be at the beginning. So you are leaving these small chunks of pieces of work behind. And there's people sometimes that get frustrated because of this, but it's part of the process of design. It's part of the process itself, and also it helps you to, I think, to be a better designer and become a better person in your work. And a third point that I would add here is that probably it's not just for designers. This point that I will add, probably if you ask to anybody that works in the tech industry, most of them will tell you the same that I will tell you now, that if you ask them, how do you feel in your work? Are you happy with the work that you're doing? Most of them probably they will tell you that they are happy, they enjoy the work that they are doing. But in the end, you should keep in mind also that this is a job. So you are working and the work that you're doing will impact people in the world, people that will use your product, that will use your services and so on. So yeah, it's fun having so it's great to have fun while working. I don't want to lose this, but in the end, keep in mind that you're working as well. Yeah, so I think that for me, those three points could be like the pillars or basic pillars of my mantras, in the sense of when I'm about to start something and working on the next project.
That's great. That's awesome. So 3 takeaways. One that I really relate to is don't be married to your ideas. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. On to you, Carl. What are your mantras like?
Well, quick before, I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work at Health Partners and Springboard. Sorry for my accent. It's a little Canadian. That's how it is around here in Minnesota. So my everyday UX mantra is about how to be as evidence-based, inclusive, and accessible in everyday design decisions as possible. I wish there was some glamorous thing that I'm doing in some large home run hitting kind of fashion, but the fact of the matter is that there's kind of a minimal incremental change, especially over a long period of time, for how you kind of conduct yourself as a UX person. So as that UX person, you kind of have to continually represent who wears that hat, is that mantra in the company. So that's why I like this question. And one of the biggest ways it comes out to me is a kind of a situation I'm going to describe. Imagine yourself early on. You assemble maybe a leadership assembles a team around a product or feature.
So that's eventually they shall ask.
And
Somebody's unmuted. Okay.
No worries. Imagine a leadership is assembling a team around a project or feature, and there's designers, there's developers, there's product owners, whatnot. Everyone is passionate about the possible outcome of the feature, how the impact of it could change the feature of the company or the product or whatnot. And everyone is very passionate in the room. And with that passion comes ideas, thoughts, motivations, whatnot. And naturally there will be competing ideas that come together, where people will clash, whatnot. And you as that UX person kind of have to be that person that says, what do you think users will actually think about these ideas? Let's bring these ideas. We like them all. Let's bring these ideas to users to decide. And so that's really what we're going to be solving, is how we give the best experience to users. So being that person that has that hat, ready to have those conversation pieces, ready to diffuse situations, but also lead to a good UX outcome, is involved in kind of my day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the next question is kind of great, and I love it because it would also be country and locality specific. And that is, what are the top 3 reality checks when it comes to expectations from a career in UX design? I'll leave it up to you guys. Who wants to take this?
I can start.
Yeah.
Probably I would add here one of the previous points that I mentioned before, which is like the fact that you are working. I think that's a reality. So you are working, and when you are on a job, this comes with a set of responsibilities. So I would add this one here as well. Another one could be that I feel like it's pretty easy nowadays to admire someone by just looking at a mock-up that you can find online in social media or in any place, no? But the difficulty is to spend time trying to think on how they reach that design, no? That mock-up. What are the reasons behind? No, there's a lot of work there, and we should try to not be, or we should try to be less impressed by how the final design of something is looking, and how people is using tools nowadays, because I think that we are valuing that much the work that people is doing these days with using one tool, another tool, or any set of tools, no? instead of just trying to think, okay, how these people reached this design. No, what were their thoughts when they were working on it. So yeah, that's another reality check that I would add to the list for sure.
Yeah. Have you had any experiences with this? Have you seen this, and how have you tackled this?
I mean, not myself, but it's really easy to see it nowadays. I mean, you go, I don't know, to Twitter or to any other social media platform, and I highly doubt that people that I don't know, claps on something or likes on something spend like a decent amount or just a sufficient amount of time, like thinking on why this is good or why they like this. No. So because using tools, I mean, tools are really important, of course. I mean, without the tools that we have nowadays, it would be very difficult to do our jobs. But in the end, the most important thing is that you find the tool that most fits for you, the one that you feel more comfortable. And once you find it, you will learn as you work. I mean, even myself nowadays, I discover like shortcuts that I didn't know that they exist, using some tool, and I get surprised. So it's not that important, like knowing how to use a tool. It's more important like how you think and what are you proposing, and then you will learn any tool that you want. No, and when you learn the tool, the results will be better, of course.
Yeah, that's a great message, that design is deeper than the tools, and design is about solving a problem, and that is a great reality check. What about you, Carl?
I'd say some of the reality checks that I come with may be a little bit different because of the path I've found to be a designer. I started my career as a software developer, and one of the main issues that I had was I feel like I was solving a lot of implementation problems or given solutions and made those solutions in reality. Whereas I was really interested in kind of the human side of it. How do these human problems exist, and how do I tackle those things? So that's what really brought me over to design. And that's a little bit different than, different people that may have found, especially through my experience mentoring. Kind of going off of what Christian said, with the social media, there comes like UX influencers, which is very interesting because there's costs and benefits to it, of course. But one of the costs is sort of the expectation of what day-to-day looks like for designers is kind of changed by these influencers types. So there's kind of a preconceived notion of what it means to be a designer, and also what kind of design work you're doing. And one of those realities is that design work is really messy. It's not very pretty. It's very in the weeds. My mural boards, my sketch pages are very gross, to put it lightly. And that's kind of the reality of what design is, that there's a lot of complexity that goes on to make simplicity. And really hearing that and changing kind of a mindset that this is design around how we can breed this sort of simplicity, and then also in line with how your users think is a little bit different than kind of the grandiose kind of sweeping, very pretty designs that you see all over social media, which can happen every now and then, but maybe not as frequently as portrayed.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see Christian nodding.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I completely agree with his point of view.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I think that's a very universal problem as a UX designer. I can see that, it's in Europe, it's in North America, it's happening in Asia as well. So yeah. Okay, well, which soft skills are often overlooked in a UX designer? What do you guys think? We can go through.
I really like that question, because if you surface job offers, maybe some of these they will not show up there. Some of them, yes, but I think that for me, the number one would be writing skills. for example. I think writing it's super important for many reasons. For me especially, because in my company we rely a lot on Slack, so we are a Slack-based company. We work a lot of asynchronous. We are remote, so you need to be a good writer, no, to communicate better what you want, no. You want to also communicate fast as well, so this is why you need writing. But not also just because of that, not also because of you need to communicate with your colleagues. Writing, it's a big part of UI design. It's like everywhere you have letters, no? And sometimes even you will have designs that you will just need to find like the right word to frame the idea that you have in mind, or to even share your thoughts with your colleagues, because it can completely change the vision of what you're thinking in order to explain it, no? If you're lucky, probably you will have UX writers in your company, and if you have them, I recommend you that you work very close with them. But it doesn't really matter if you have them or not. I would recommend you to try to think on not final copy, but almost what you would like to see in and to read in that piece of the UI, you know. So writing for sure, collaboration and communication, which writing directly impacts on it. So you need to be proactive. You need to ask for help when you need help. You need to help others as well. So collaboration and communication is a must as well. And then something that maybe it's not that common like to think, but I think that it's important to understand our interest, personal interest, in the sense of our career as designers, because we are all designers, but we all have probably different interests. Maybe someone is more interested in to learn, I don't know, interaction design. Another person is more interested in learn icon design, for example, no? And if you start thinking about this, you can also learn what are your strengths, what are your limitations, no, as well. So that's another kind of a soft skill that I would say, like, learn who you are, or to get to know you a little bit, because it will help you in order to move around your team, who you will need to ask for something, you know, in your company, and how also can you help others, no? So yeah, try to understand yourself, try to see what are your interests, how do you want to grow yourself, and also in the company that you're working. So that's, I'm not sure if it's a soft skill, but I would add it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely important to know what your strong points are. So definitely. Carl, what are your thoughts on soft skills for UX designers?
Sure, I'd say one of the biggest things in terms of soft skills people overlook in the UX field is good debate skills, and good ways to kind of compromise, and good ways to show that. During some of those push-pull conversations where decisions are being made, evidence is being presented, there would be debates back and forth and whatnot. I see a lot of times where maybe there's a designer or a researcher that's done a lot of good work, a lot of good understanding of situation, bring a lot of value. But then as soon as sort of there's another discipline with a different, maybe opposing or tangentially unrelated opinion that may be going against theirs, kind of give in, where it has this sort of seemingly that they understand that other people's perspective is more valuable than the UX perspective. And you know, there is some cases where that's true, but not always. And it seems like it's kind of across the board where people quickly kind of give into these other disciplines. And you know, we have evidence to show that that's just not the case. That UX is very valuable. It deserves a point discussion at the table, and it helps to breed business, tech, and leadership decisions and whatnot. And so I'd say being able to tactfully navigate some of these debates, tactfully understand that other people's perspectives, you know, are valuable, but then compromise aggressively is really overlooked. and it can keep your design's forefront and your research forefront and the user's forefront. And so having those debate skills, having those ways to compromise aggressively, I think are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of a time that back when I was at T-Mobile, I had a great manager who could push back to the business team and really show proof of concept and talk about why we're doing what we're doing and why research is going to take so much time. So I absolutely see that coming through. And I think it's very important. I also went through some business classes so I could pick up on business jargon, and that really helped me. Did you ever face anything like this? Did you experience something like this at work recently, or maybe not even at this place of work?
Well, I'd say overall, in terms of like the larger scale of where like product, tech, and UX are kind of aligned in companies, I think historically product, business centered is kind of at the top priority. So there's kind of like this inherent, prioritization of business aspects versus UX, but in reality, UX feeds into business. We know that to be true. So it's kind of like pretty inherent to where I've worked in the past and also currently right now. So it's always kind of this tactful navigation of how to align with their goals, but also showcase that our goals that maybe not even necessarily directly aligning are still aligning, and navigating that really carefully.
Yeah, really bring everyone on the same page. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Christian, what advice do you have for new designers that are advocating for investment in UX at their workplaces, especially if they're going solo?
Well, I mean, I think that in general, being surrounded by other colleagues, it's a good thing because what I said previously, I mean, we can all be designers, but with different interests, different points of views, different thoughts, so if you have more resources that think differently and you can have this over the table every time you have to work in a new project, in the end, the product should be, or the results that you will achieve, they will be better for sure. Also, not all projects that you are going to work on are going to be solved the same way. So it's not like you are, putting a shelf on the wall and you just grab the hammer and you just hit on and put it on. Every project will require probably different skills or different visions, So I think that having many people in the team that can cover all these needs, it's something really good. So for instance, in my previous company, we were a small UX team and we identified the strengths that we had as colleagues and we wanted to find or close like this team with someone that was like a good enough in design systems, and every one of us could like support each other in one way, one with research, the other one or in visual design and so on, So I think it's important to cover all these points, and it's really interesting to invest because of this, because it generates more thought into the process of design thinking, and you are covering more necessities. So I would try to argument this to my boss, for example, if I had to do it.
Carl, what are your thoughts on advocating for investment in UX? And while we're talking, guys, is this, because I know this is a very common problem. Have you faced this yet? So whoever's listening in, let us know if you've faced this and if this is something that you see, if it wasn't you yourself. Go for it, Carl.
So I'd say one of the best ways to advocate for investing more into UX is to point out that it's cheap to do. It has little investment. It has big return, and other companies are doing it. And falling behind that curve has real costs to the product and the company. To elaborate a little bit more on this, typical designers, one designer can work with many tech teams. Typically, the ratio of designers to developers is very low. A lot of designers can work with, or excuse me, a small amount of designers can work with a lot of developers. Typically, that UX work is quick, so it inherently brings down the cost, and so it multiplies pretty much every avenue of the findings because of how cheap it is, and also the price of UX research. For instance, can be nothing, or it can be just a tiny little drop in the bucket in terms of what monetary investment it is. And the return on this is massive. It can help align tech teams. It can help align product. It can help align leadership and their vision of the product. There's a Medium article out there somewhere. I can't remember quite where it is, but they stated that good UX research can provide a 300% return on investment compared to otherwise without. And then it can also accelerate a project by 33% up to 50%. So with that design, with that research, those numbers are really hard to compete with in other metrics. And we talk about kind of 5%, 10% increases and things like this. This is just a massive, in comparison, kind of pales in comparison. And so, with all these investments, if you aren't doing it as a company, the other company is going to be doing it. The other place is going to be doing it. You may not see it this quarter, you may not feel it this quarter, but you will fall behind the curve. And this is what people are doing. And if you don't, then our product will suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was right on the nose. And that is something that I see a lot, especially as a senior UXer, you do have to jump in there and push back. But if you're solo, it's a lot harder. If you're a consultant, it's something that I've seen consultants are very reluctant to really get into a fight that isn't theirs. Do you have anything specific to say to people who are feeling kind of boxed in or feeling like they can't really advocate for it?
Yeah, I'd say when you feel like you can't advocate for it, you kind of have to recognize where you are in sort of the UX maturity scale, and know that you're probably pretty low. I've worked in scenarios where my direct hiring manager didn't know what UX was until they hired me. They had no idea. And as you guys probably imagine, that's a very fun working situation. But so you have to take your battles and take your wins where you can. Some of that, like where you're moving the needle 1%, might be the best opportunity. That's as good as it gets, because you're one person. It's small incremental change over time. Really understand where your wins are, even if it's tweaks in language. That's a step in the right direction. Find where those wins are. Try to harness those wins, but don't be discouraged when it doesn't change overnight.
Yeah, that's great advice. Christian, have you ever found yourself in such a situation, or is this you've been lucky?
Not really. Fortunately, lucky for me, I never faced any situation that I had to push for that. But yeah, I would agree with what Carl said. I would not add anything myself, as I didn't experience any similar situation, luckily.
Yeah, that is lucky. Take it from me, because it's been a reality check coming back home to India, where I'm finding everybody wants to be a UX designer and nobody knows what UX is. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so if you guys could go back in time and re-answer one interview question from your job interview, which one would it be and how would you answer it? Christian, you're up.
Wow, that's that's tough because I'm not sure if I had like uncomfortable questions and so on, but maybe some tips for interviews. I can have some tips for interviews. Like you will face different kind of questions, more like HR oriented, company culture, and then more like design, product related questions. No? If we go first to the design field, don't be afraid of showing your work in the sense of explaining the entire process of your work, and don't just show like the final piece of your designs. Explain how you reach that. Show them all your messy documents, all your notes, everything. Just expose your method, expose your process, because this is what people wants to hear from you, wants to understand how you reach that point. No, so don't be afraid of that. Just it's your process. It doesn't mean that it's bad or good. It's just your process. Explain it, and it should be fine. Then perhaps if we go then to the HR situation, questions, for example, related about money. It's questions that I will have maybe like wanted to talk about money like faster. No, I mean, all of you have a value. It's difficult to talk about money, but try to study where you are. Try to figure out what you should earn for your job. What other people, similar people to you, it's earning in similar companies within similar roles, because it's really important that you start talking about money at some point. If they don't bring this topic, just open it yourself. So yeah, I mean, those are tips that I would have great to have them when I first start looking for some job years ago. Especially also because the design thing, I always try to be very, very clean with all my process and so on. No? But in the end, I learned that it's really nice to get into the situation of understanding how your work is, how you reach the final mockups. No? So don't be afraid. Just be yourself and explain them your entire process.
Yeah, that's great. That's good advice. Carl, what would you go back in time and re-answer differently?
Well, I have a more specific scenario that I want to address. I'm being vulnerable here, so I hope everyone can appreciate the story.
This is a safe space.
Thank you. So if I go back and change one answer I gave to an interview question, it'd be my first UX job, actually. And the company was hiring a very specific role. It was called UX research prototyper. So it was mostly you're designing around research prototypes. You're taking the kind of the first stab at a feature, get quick kind of results. We're using something called RUC studies, which are just like rapid fire, quick UX studies. In attempts to get a kind of like a baseline of how UX should function for a new product. And one of the questions they asked was, how long would it take in your mind for you to develop or create this prototype and design it and make it interactable for users? And me knowing my knowledge now, both of more maturity within UX and then also the expectations of the company, my answer would be a lot different. They were expecting 70 pages of unique designs for a prototype, very intense interactivity, whatnot. And me not knowing this, I just said it would take me 7 hours to make this prototype, which is, you do the math, that is one page per 6 minutes, and I'd be cranking out these prototypes. They're going at lightning speed. I don't think that's possible, but if it was possible, it would be done with Sketch. Definitely not possible with Figma or Axure. But going back, I would definitely change and understand what their expectations of what a prototype meant for them. This going forward kind of means different things, different people. We have lingo set in UX, but how we interpret this lingo is different for each company, different for every kind of cluster of people, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in the United States, whether it be in Minnesota, whether it be in California. People are doing kind of understandings of what these different things mean. So I would want to suss out what the expectation is or what this word colloquial means to them, and then respond accordingly, not saying that I can design one page in 6 minutes.
That's actually really good advice. Okay, so I've been told that Alessandro has been able to join in. So where are you? Hey, there you are. So Alessandro, before.
Here we are.
Hi.
So sorry for late because I'm in Paris right now. So I was in a co-working and they kicked me off. I didn't know it was closing. So I tried to figure out find some spot. I'm in a McDonald's right now. So the smart working, good things.
We're glad that you could join us.
Everything is perfect right now.
So I think there's a little bit of a lag, but I think we can work with it. So Alessandro, Carl and Christian have already introduced themselves and told us where they're at. So maybe you want to jump in with that, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, hi to everyone. I'm Alessandro. I am originally from Italy. Now I'm talking to you from France. But I'm a product designer. Now I'm a product and design lead, and I act like every step of the design phase. So I started as a graphic designer in agencies. I worked as a UX designer. I worked as a creative director. So I saw many steps, many point of view of the design phase. And I'm particularly love communities. I founded one of the biggest communities in Italy that is called UX UI Designer Italia. And I put myself in every community I found because I think that networking and the exchanging of experience is the basis to work well in our sector.
I'm going to pick your brain after this, but for now, let's move on to the next question. How do you approach hiring, or what stands out for you when it comes to putting on the hiring management hat? Alessandro, you can go ahead.
Okay, I love very much the hiring part. So I love to have interviews as an interviewer, and also to have interview as a candidate, because I suggest every time, this is a thing that I say many times also to my team, that a designer should, and not only a designer, everyone in the IT sector should continue doing interview also if he's satisfied with his actual work, because doing interviews it's important to understand what's the sector, where is the sector going, and how you put yourself in a ladder. So if you are okay with your expertise, or you have to study or to focus on something. So this is my first suggestion, and I think it's very important that is an interview in general is a bilateral things. So you have to choose the right candidate, but also the candidate has to choose the company. So I like very much candidates that ask many things about the process, of the methodologies, about the organization. I usually don't like candidates that only thinks about money or vacation. Or it's important because, as I said also before, it's very important to have the right amount also of money. But I like the people is curious about our stuff, so the especially of methodologies. When they ask me about methodologies, usually I'm very happy. So, and the last thing, it's I like very much the people that come from other fields outside design, to ask them why they choose design, and how their soft skills that developed in the first experience could help them to be a different designer, because I think that diversity also in design team is very important. So having people coming from different fields is very important to have a rich experience and many point of view into the design team.
That's great. Christian, what's your take on hiring?
Yeah, so I didn't have a lot of experience on hiring. It was like 2 years ago when I started hiring, getting involved into hiring process, looking for new candidates or new colleagues for our team. And it was really fun. Something that we always wanted to find, as I said before, is to find people that could bring something unique to the team, like something that we don't have. No, we are all designers, but I mean, let's try to look for someone that can bring us something also that we don't have, something unique. No, diverse is something that we are also looking for, diverse people, especially, for example, like. On very basic aspects of life, like it's not the same like working with one person that born and raised from the UK at their 30s than one person born and raised in Spain at their 20s. No, they will probably think different. They will probably see technology in a different way. No, I mean, it's really interesting. For instance, nowadays, trying to understand new generations, how are they seeing digital tools, no, and so on. So this is why it's also very important to work with people from different nationalities, different ranges of age, and so on. And yeah, and as I said, try to figure out what you're lacking as a team. Try to invest on something new, and for sure, always try to verify that you will be enjoying working with that person. Like they are going to fit the culture of your company. They are going to fit like the vibes of your team and everything, no? Because if they are good designers, but you are not going to be comfortable working next to them, then you will have a problem probably. So yeah, try to look at these three. I would try to look at these three things when hiring people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Vibe, I know it sounds very ambiguous, but I think everybody here knows what you mean when you say vibe. And I'd like to see if someone's going to add something to my team in addition to design. So yeah, really good points there, Carl.
So when I'm involved in the hiring process, I put on the hiring hat. The main things I look for are, are they evidence-based designers? Can they back up their decisions and showcase how it relates back to a good user outcome? Do they work pragmatically? Or work in the evidence? Do we work in reality? Do we work within whatever space they are in? Can they work with projects that maybe they're a little less personally connected to show that they have that empathetic connection to users outside of their kind of personal involvement. So a lot of this comes out, I think, about in process, but also the portfolio that handles that process. So typically, what I want to see in a portfolio is a logical progression from how they are handed a problem from whomever they might see, the discovery of that information from that problem to understand more, the decisions from that discovery, how are decisions fueled both in early decisions and then also end results of the design decisions, and how do they handle that handoff. So I want to see the different methodologies that they use as well, and how this is fueled overall. And then also during that handoff, whatever that may be, how do they keep parts of their recommendation true to itself? So it's very rare in UX where 100% of our recommendations are given out, taken taken completely, 100%. Typically, we would see, like maybe 80 or 50 or whatever that may be. How can we keep some resemblance of our recommendations intact while managing and meshing with other perspectives, whatnot, as I was kind of alluding to before. But how does that navigation, that negotiation process work with them? That's something I really try to find out for in the interviews.
That's great. It was really holistic. All three of you had few overlapping points, but it was very holistic because you guys did have three different lenses to look at different candidates. And I think that when you're working or you're interviewing for one company, there are different people taking your interviews. So I think this really covers kind of the mindset of the people who are going to interview you guys. So I think those were really great points. We have one final question and then we'll start taking your questions in chat. So the final question is, with more companies investing in human psychology and behavior, where do you see the field of UX heading toward? Will we reach a breaking point in terms of eliminating dark patterns? That's a pretty futuristic question, but we'll start with you, Alessandro. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the future of UX it will be very near to the meaning of ethics. So things like dark patterns, things about inclusion. So the future of UX will be very, very near to the ethic. To the ethic environment. So I think that will be in the future will be important for a designer to understand the limits of his power. So knowing that we can design, we can impact really, really hard on the people's lives, and this is a big responsibility. So having this power to change people's lives, we give up this responsibility, and it's important to do it in the right way. So also thinking about the future of the planet, sustainability, I think that these will be the aspects that every designer should think in the next years.
Yeah, what do you think, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are designers basically because of the needs of the market, no, and it's a field that it's in constant evolution. So nowadays we have people working as product designers that came maybe from other disciplines like graphic design or maybe even developers. So we are like, everybody's contributing, no, on this constant evolution of this field, no. And I believe that in the next years, it's a field that it will be still in use. Probably it will change because everything changes super quick these days. I don't know also how we will call it. Maybe we will call it differently because we are changing our titles every now and then. But for sure, I believe that we will still be there. We will still need people to take care about products, digital products. They are very used and they will be used for the next year. So that's for sure. About dark patterns, I didn't have like a lot of experience in the sense of having to use them. I want to think that people that had to use dark patterns previously was because maybe they had probably no choice. They had to do it because they were trapped in a company that they had to do this because of reasons, you know. And I think that they will always exist if we don't find a way to try to prevent those situations. They will always exist, no? But I had like actually an interesting question the other day talking with one colleague, which he threw me a question that probably I will just throw it here and let's see what the others think about it. That usually people use dark patterns to make a profit, to make their own profit of something, no? But you could probably use a dark pattern for something not that evil, something more positive, like, I don't know, for instance, like a charity event or something, something similar, no? Would you still call this a dark pattern? Probably I would say yes, but the situation or the end, it's a little bit different. No? So yeah, I don't know what you others would think about this.
Yeah, that's interesting. It all boils down to morals and ethics and a deeper question, more existential crisis almost. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that we need to look out for and be aware of going forward. What are your thoughts, Carl?
So I'll try to answer as quick as possible. I want some Q&A. So I've been thinking about this question quite a bit, not because I'm going to be saying something like insightful or exciting or anything like that, but because it's kind of tangential to my work right now. If you're not familiar, there's something called Kano analysis, and in short, it's a way of analyzing market trends, understanding market behavior based off of market expectations. And so when more and more companies are going to be investing in UX, there's an idea in Kano, people will start to have delighters, and then going past expectation. A lot of where we are in the UX is solving issues of current technology not meeting expectations. That's kind of like a lot of our work inside of UX, at least in my opinion, in my experience. And so when we transition to that, instead of searching for delighters that set market expectations, set the trend, it changes our use cases as designers. Instead of fixing it, we're elevating beyond sort of coming from a negative experience to expectations, going from expectation to that next level. And so for an example of this would be, Amazon's return policy, where when this return policy was created, it was a time when returns were actually pretty hard. You may not get your money back, you may not be able to return an item, but as soon as it's changed, Amazon put a lot of pressure on pretty much every e-commerce and brick and mortar commerce, where you'd get your money back, you'd be able to return it within 30 days. The rules are simple and not complicated. And this puts pressure on everywhere else to follow suit. And if you don't, then you're missing out on customers that appreciate that return policy. And we know that delighter drives a lot of market competition to that company that creates that delighter. So I think the future of UX will lead to understanding those delighters whenever that comes. We will always have companies that are falling behind expectation, but lead in other ways. But when that starts to transition, when we start to invest more and more in UX, that'll become less and less. And in terms of the dark pattern, I think as long as companies can kind of use their advantage to gain something that users don't typically want, we're going to be having dark patterns as a means to an end to get there. I think dark patterns would become less and less dark over time, in the idea of they'll be less intrusive, they'll be less combative, less bad, but still we'll have working against kind of user expectations.
Yeah, I really hope so. But yeah, I really like the way that you guys all kind of put it all together. It was great to hear from you guys. So we're on to Q&A now. So before I get into the chat, I see a hand raised from Adrian. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question in person?
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, go for it.
Good. Well, first of all, thank you for the talk. It's very interesting. Okay, I decided to just like get the mic because I need to make some background before. I came from computer science and I got my bachelor, and I was working after that as a UX designer and front-end developer, because I've been always getting in the UX world with little collaboration in different departments in the university. After being working for around 4 years, I decided to do a master in human computer interaction design. I recently finished the master. It's kind of hard for me to try to get access to like kind of more junior mid position. It's kind of like everyone is ignoring me, and I don't know exactly like why they are kind of like not recognizing me, my previous experiences. That is kind of one way. how to I don't know, stand out more that I already have previous experiences. And also the second question is like I recently had well, a job here in Paris as well as Alexandro. It got short because I got like I don't know, like a bad fit with the team. And they basically like fire me. Of course, they give me like some slightly reason who, of course, I can like think about it and I don't know, like try to avoid it in the future. But they were like very, very subtle. For me, it was mostly the fit with the team. And the second question will be how to overcome that for your perspective in the next interviews and stuff like that. Because I'm getting interviews from time to time, but it's mostly that the first step is kind of the hardest to skip that gap, let's say. Yeah, I know if it's clear.
Okay, so I
Sorry
just
for the
wanted
long
to
question.
interject. I just wanted to interject and say that we have a very short amount of time. I think we have only 3 minutes to go. So hopefully, Adrian, would you like one particular person to answer your question?
The second, probably, how do you see like this kind of gap in the CV of someone else? How to overcome it? Yeah.
Would that be Christian?
I think I would need more context. So, I mean, I will just give you like some tips in order to, I think it was today or yesterday that I read a tweet that it was kind of fun, but also a bit sad, which is don't invest in your portfolio, invest in your connections. It was that tweet, which in reality, it helps. It helps a lot. So because when I started years ago, what I did is basically I learned a lot from people using social media. Like I jumped into communities like Dribbble or Behance or other sites that I don't even remember. Probably they don't exist anymore. But what I tried to do is look at the work that people were doing. I remember, like, I really liked, for example, the work that Dropbox was doing. Like, I think it was like in 2011 or 12 or something like that. And they had great designers. So I just wanted to learn from them. So what I did is just, it feels stupid, but I sat on my computer and I just tried to learn from what I was seeing, no, from others. And then this makes that you start doing connections with people, no, and you start sharing what you're doing. Then you are meeting maybe some of them in person, or you have a random chat. So if you start doing this, you are learning, but at the same time, you are also making these connections that people get to know you and you get to know other people. And then you, I don't know, spontaneously, maybe you have an opportunity to apply at some company, not just because you are a friend of these people, but just, hey, this position just got opened in the company that I'm working. Maybe you can try and apply and see how it goes. So I think this is something that it can help you start moving around into these communities, because this helped me a lot when I started. No, but it was years ago, but probably this is something that still works, because when you find people that you are comfortable with working with, I find them in another company. So maybe I'm working today in a company, and I don't know, in some years I find people that I was working them, like, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. No? So yeah, try to move around a little bit.
Okay. Good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being brave enough to raise your hand, Adrian. Thank you all so much for your questions. I know that we couldn't get to them, but remember that all of the speakers today are also mentors, so you can reach out to them and you could take this offline, and that way you also get more one-on-one time. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. I think, are there any closing thoughts